Welcome to the Making Rooms podcast. My name is Eric, and these are my ruminations on designing, publishing, and finding community for the Explore Rooms role-playing game. If you want to join me on this journey, then let's start a conversation in the comments. What are some of the struggles that you've had trying to introduce role-playing games to your kids? What systems have you tried? What games have you succeeded with, and what have you stumbled with? For context, in February, I kickstarted my first role-playing game, Let's Go to Rumino, an Explore Rooms RPG for kids of all ages. This is available now as a PDF on my web store at explorerooms.com, and you can pre-order the print copy, which will be going out in April after the backers have all gotten their copies. Before we jump into the topic of role-playing games for kids, let's go to an Explore Room. You're at the edge of a swamp. There are cattails lining the edge of the water. There are lily pads floating on top, and mangrove trees are growing out and rising up, providing shade to everything. In front of you is a box, and inside the box are rubber toys. A frog, a bird, and a dragonfly. What do? You place the frog on the lily pad, and it croaks to life. You place the dragonfly on a cattail, and its wings vibrate. You put a bird on a branch, and its singing fills the air. The cattails part, and the lily pads form a stepping path through the mangrove trees, where branches reveal a door to the next room. Do any of those three animals join you for your next adventure? I hope you've enjoyed this swamp room. Let's go on to the main topic. In this video, I'm talking about my advice, experience, and thoughts on playing role-playing games with kids. Now, I'm really early in my game design career or maturation, and so some of these things are probably going to be kind of what I feel now, and down the road I might feel differently. And there may be some people out there who have different ideas on playing with kids, who may have way more experience than I do. And if you have any thoughts or either feedback or criticism on these ideas, please share them down below. I'd love the opportunity to have the conversation and learn from each other. But this isn't a thesis. These are some of the ideas that I've included in my book, Let's Go to Rumino, but I've expanded on them even more here because I think I've had more time to think and write on this topic since even publishing that book. And as I look to designing and creating more content for the Explore Rooms, I'm trying to be very mindful of what it is like for other people to try and introduce their kids to role-playing games. Let me frame too who we're talking about. We're often talking about kids, I think, starting at age 4 and up until age 12. And here's why I think we're starting there, because when we learn about childhood development, their play development, it isn't until 2 or 3 years old where they start learning and seeking out knowledge on social rules, problem solving, and cooperation. Before that, they're often playing on their own or even solo playing next to other kids, but not that interested in each other. I remember times where we would get our young toddler kids together with other kids, and it was like they didn't even know each other was there. They would railroad each other and push each other down to get at toys. And so it's really starting at 4 years old, 6 years old, where roles, tasks, rules, having a group leader, and cooperative play really starts kind of becoming more solidified in their development. And so role-playing games, even the most basic building blocks of role-playing games, aren't necessarily accessible younger than that. If you are a parent, I want you to think back to all of the ways that you've taught your kids different things, whether that's how to ride a bike or how to shoot a basketball, how to play catch with a big rubber ball and then maybe a mitt and baseball. All of those things have progressions. We start simple and easy. We start close together and we start by light tosses, etc., that are easier to catch. Even though that we know someday this might prepare them to play the game of baseball or basketball or any other number of sports. Now we're just concerned with the fundamentals. We're just concerned with motor skills. And so I wanted you to think about that approach when we're introducing young kids to role playing games. That we are not playing the big game that we see in an actual play with all the rules and all the dynamics and all of the narrative arcs, etc. We're playing a version of this that's approachable and that's fun and that's appropriate for their level. So if we think about that first thing as we want to practice at role-playing games when we're playing role-playing games with our kids, I want you to think about being flexible. There's a push and pull to working with your kids. You've seen them progress through different skills, and sometimes they get to a really good place, and then you stay there for a little bit, and they work on that until they're ready to expand again. So there may be times where you need to move forward quickly in your gameplay to keep their attentions, but there's other times in which you might need to slow down when they find something that really interests them. I think about kids picking up a stick or a rock. Sometimes they want to have lots of excitement and energy, and sometimes they want to pick up a stick and they want to entertain themselves with a stick. And I know that my partner and I always, when there's an opportunity for kids to entertain themselves with something, don't advance past that too quickly. Let them enjoy that for as long as possible before you kind of push them to make that play more complex. You have multiple kids of different ages, then of course you know that some kids are playing at a different level than others. And so keep that in mind, where one may be wanting to advance forward and the other may not be interested in going in that same direction or going as quickly, or solving things or puzzles or whatever in the same way as their older sibling, or vice versa as their younger sibling. Now, why are we even trying to teach our kids how to play role-playing games? And I think that there are some very selfish reasons, which isn't bad, but we enjoy role-playing games and the stories we've been able to tell and the experiences we've had, the bonds we've shared with our friends over this tabletop game. We want to form bonds with our children through play, and when we get to share the things we love with them, that can become a kind of pillar and a lasting kind of cornerstone in our relationship with our kids over time. And so if role-playing games are important to you, you want them to be important to them. And so we're giving them the option, or we're teaching them so that we give them the best chance of loving this game far into the future. Imaginative play is fantastic for critical thinking, for thinking through problems, for in real life when they're faced with decisions to make. Do they have sort of the practice of looking at that at a bunch of different angles and choosing from an assortment of options that they might have? So role-playing games can help with critical thinking. And then creativity and self-expression are important ways for not only our kids to kind of be their full selves, but they're little windows for us into what they like, what they're feeling, what they're thinking. And as a parent, that gets harder and harder to know what other people are thinking and feeling, etc. And so these are ways for us to see that in our own kids. Just like in real life, it's okay to try new things. It's okay to have attempted or brought out certain things that you hope they will latch onto, and maybe it doesn't work. And I think very rarely is it a make or break, that if you do something one way and it doesn't work, that they're kind of going to cross this off the list forever. There's going to be bumps and bruises. There's going to be skinned knees. We don't, as parents, shy away from our kids bumping into things, and we know that they're sturdier than they look sometimes. And so I don't want there to be, in this, as we're talking through this, I don't want there to be any shame or any negative feelings about having tried things or currently trying things that might be different than what I talk about with your kids. It may work. It might. Every kid is unique. Every parent is unique. And so what works for you may not work for someone else. These are things that I'm sharing from my experience, and I hope that you can take some of them and apply that to how you're role playing with your kiddos. And on the other side of that coin, I want you to be open to trying some of the things I talk about because they may be a way for you and your kids to bond over role-playing games sooner when they're younger, so that by the time they get to the right developmental age, that they're ready and eager and interested in jumping into some different kinds of games, different stakes of games, etc. Next, let's talk about themes. The theme, I think, is the most important part for emotionally safe play. And when kids have emotionally safe play, they are more expressive, they are more interested, they're more engaged. There are some universal themes that I think many people love in role-playing games, but especially I think are appropriate for kids. First off are kind of the themes that are relevant to them, the things that they love, which is a revolving door sometimes. Is it dinosaurs? Is it robots? Is it fairies? Unicorns? Is it Candyland? Our kids are constantly learning about new things, and especially at a young age, everything is new, and so they get fixated and they get interested and they get fall in love with these different categories. And I think it's important when introducing role-playing games to be able to introduce themes that are in sync with what they're enjoying. And so for you as an adult, fantasy or sci-fi or dark horror might be the game for you. And so if you want to share that with your kids and that's specifically what you want them to get into, that's fantastic. There may be you may need to look at a bridge from what they like and what they enjoy, and then later find a path towards what you enjoy. We universally love agency, and I think a lot of games like Dungeons and Dragons skew towards heroism, right? That you're near invincible and that you have a large impact on the world. I think universally we like exploring new and interesting ideas, experiencing things that are impossible in the real world. Sometimes we talk about this as escapism, but even just imagining things that we haven't thought before. And with kids, there's a lot of things that they haven't been introduced to. So more things seem fantastic than they might to an adult playing even a fantasy role-playing game, etc. So where dragons are this idea that doesn't exist in the real world, even like a whole lake of jello is something that's impossible in the real world. And so equally, these things are fantasy to kids. Now, one of the reasons that drove me away from some other games like Dungeons and Dragons and even some more popular kids games were themes that I felt like were too mature for even my 10-year-old. So things like violence. There's a lot of games where one of the first ways to resolve any situation is through violence, through a fight, through using spells to harm each other. There's a reason why we have kind of labels for movies and TV shows, etc. These ratings help us decide whether or not we want to introduce kids to these different things. And so violence is something that I was not appropriate for my 5-year-old when we were playing. And even though I was the one introducing these moments of violence, she was the one who was saying, no, this is scary to me. This is not something I like. I'm going to jump out of this as fast as possible if this doesn't change. So, back to being flexible, back to reading our kids, that was me trying something, testing something, and realizing that, nope, that wasn't going to work for her. And so in advance, I'm sharing that I would strongly consider removing violence as a part of your introduction to role-playing games, even though it is a core part of some other systems that we love and enjoy on the regular. Death is kind of with that, but death is something that we confront, that can be hard to confront in real life. Is that something that you're ready for your kids to experience in a game? Is that something that's important for you to have them experience in a game? If not, I'd say let's leave that out. I think video games, it's very clear that video games give you extra lives and almost unlimited lives, because if you don't get through the level in 3 lives, then you start over from the beginning of the level to try again. And so even video games that have violence remove the idea of death from the scenario. Things pop back up. Things are, if not invincible, they're always there, no matter how many times you play the game. Backing it down from violence and death, think about what are the stakes of the game. What is at risk for loss to your players in a game? Um, I think that even in a game system at young ages, sometimes there's very little difference between how they feel in the game versus how they'd feel in real life by having something taken away. In that same regard, losing friends, losing items, having one of the other players get something that they don't get. And we'll talk about kind of fairness later. But those emotions that they experience in real life are very real inside of games as well. So think about are the stakes that you're going to put in front of them if you feel like loss is even something that they have to deal with at this stage. Themes are a really easy way to create role-playing games or to introduce role-playing games in a way that's more appealing to kids, that lets them play in the spaces that they already enjoy. And I think that there are certain mature themes that you don't need to introduce kids right away. Just because you want them to play role-playing games with you later doesn't mean that they need the full D&D experience of fighting kobolds or goblins as level 1 characters. I think that that's too much for younger kids, or at least my youngest kid. And I think that if I go back to the stick analogy, there are so many other things that kids love and enjoy and will spend time with. Do we need to introduce that yet? Or can we save that for when they're older and give them even more new things to explore at later stages? Next, let's talk about mechanics. And I think here it's also important to think about how do you adapt mechanics so that they match your kid's developmental level. If you're dealing with a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, 3 years apart there, they're at drastically different stages of development and things that they've learned and experienced and what they're able to bring to a gaming experience. So we want to think about rules as stepping stones towards the games we want them to play when they're older. Maybe you think of the minimal viable role-playing game elements, the things that still make it a role-playing game, even if it's not, full Dungeons and Dragons or, other systems. First, forget rules that take up a lot of time, right? You don't always have a lot of time with kids, whether it be because of your schedule, maybe because of their attention span, or maybe because it's something that creates a gap between, centering around their gameplay and doing paperwork or something else. Lose rules that require a lot of referencing or tracking. That's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of red tape, it's a lot of bogging down gameplay. And for older kids and adults, some of that can be rewarding because we see at the other end what tracking all that stuff does for us. But for young kids, it's hard to see the benefit of tracking and keeping score or those sorts of things because they're not thinking about what that's going to be later or what that adds up to later. And then when it comes to math, make sure it's an appropriate level. I don't think the game state is the time to be teaching math. It should be a time to maybe practice math, but it should be the kind of math that maybe they're learning in school. And so if they're not doing addition yet, if they're not spending a lot of time in that kind of math, then don't make that a high pressure part of your game. So with those kind of 3 rules, getting rid of things that take a lot of time, getting rid of a lot of references and tracking, and making sure math is not the most important focus of this, then here are the parts that I would cut from a game system to start teaching it to kids. 1, character creation. I know that that's a super fun part and interesting part of a lot of role-playing games, but that's where you get a lot of the reference stuff. You got stats, you got abilities, you got classes, you got a lot of things that are tied to each class, and sometimes those are very limiting. And for kids, that's not the most important thing to, kind of box them into something very restrictive. 2, success and fail checks. Now, I know that that's a quintessential part of role-playing games to see if you succeed. Again, we're not in the basketball game at the championships. We're here learning to dribble the ball. We're here learning to shoot the ball. I know shooting a ball is a success check. But even before that, we lower the hoop. We make sure that success is as easy as possible. And if you're trying to build kind of feelings of success and reward in playing role-playing games, then don't make failure an option to start with. One of my favorite concepts that I've been learning about in the last few months has been the idea of failing forward. That even if you don't make the right choice, or even if you don't succeed, that you're still moving forward, or that you're getting something different. Or there's a lot of games where you succeed, but then there's a consequence. And so I think for kids, there can be a great way of using success and a complication as a way to encouraging them to continue to take actions and try new things, and then later introducing different kinds of complications, and then maybe failure down the road. And then third, story arcs. We love our, actual play story arcs. We love falling in love with characters and big bad guys and saving the world. And I'm telling you, those are some of my favorite things as well, but they're not important for kids at young ages. It's not necessarily important for them to have a big continuous arc. And that's not to say that you can't have elements and you can't come back to things and have things build on each other, but they don't need to be big and complex stories. We can keep it simple. It's, think, more like one-shots, but even more in my game, Let's Go Rumino, we think of things in just single rooms, single puzzle, and that may be all we get to in a session is a single room or 2 rooms or 3 rooms. We're not worried about how they're connected to an overarching quest at this time and at this age. Now, the last part about mechanics I want to talk about is adjusting the difficulty levels for each kid. When you're playing with young kids, like I said, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, only 3 years apart, have drastically different capabilities than a 43-year-old and a 47-year-old who are 4 years apart. So think about how you want to challenge them differently within a game. In my book, Let's Go to Rumino, I talk often about just the challenge of choosing the right action that fits the scenario as a simple puzzle. And so for a younger player, it may be presenting them with a situation and asking them what's the appropriate action. And they may not get the right action right away, and it shouldn't be a failure state, but encouraging them back to, well, what is the right action? What's something that they could do that would be an appropriate action for the situation? For an older kid, you may ask them for the right action to take in a scenario and then add on to that an additional kind of test or check or to roll a dice, etc. And so there's different ways to make that different levels of challenge, in the same way that you can theme rooms to what my younger kid likes soft, fluffy, pink things, and my older kid wants harsh, toothy things. So you can change the themes to fit your kids. You can also change the mechanics to suit their different stages of development. Lastly, let's talk about role-playing. Now, in mechanics, I cut out character creation and story arcs. And you're probably asking, well, what is there left to role-play with? There's a couple of things here. With character creation, I think that kids' imaginations are broader than what any box is ready to contain. And I know that for you and me, when we're playing role-playing games, we like to fit into boxes. We like to come into these places and say, okay, here I'm going to play a mech pilot, and over here I'm going to play a samurai, over here I'm going to play a ranger. We like to fit into these different boxes, and for kids, that's different. No box that you create or that exists in your game is going to be able to contain all the other ideas that your kids may have for wanting to engage with the world that they want to play in. And then also there's sometimes where they just want to be themselves. When they dress up as pirates or as a princess or whatever for Halloween, they're often dressing up as themselves being that thing. What would they feel like and act like as a pirate or as a princess? So I think that we can use that thing that they're very familiar with to introduce them to role-playing games. Now, there are a whole lot of adventures that you can have with kids that aren't big, long arcs, that are age appropriate, and that I like to think of as like 0-level characters. Can they help someone out with a problem that they need to solve? Can they do something with trading, things that of value to them for other things that they would like from someone else? Can they find things that have been hidden or have been lost? Similar, can they do detective work and try and round up all the clues leading to an answer of some sort, a riddle? Can they solve simple puzzles or even complex puzzles? Can they wander around a big labyrinth type dungeon crawl where there's something new around every corner? You can take away a lot of mature themes and still provide many adventures that can last you for years and years without having to turn to some of those other mature or themes that aren't necessarily appropriate or desired by your kids. And I think that there's a lot more ways that we can kind of come back to that analogy of the stick. That when kids pick up a stick, they can imagine it in a whole bunch of ways, and they can play with it in a whole bunch of ways. And the next week they find a different stick and they collect them and they hold on to them because they're just really cool. That we can create these kind of little versions of role-playing games. We can take your favorite game and you can strip it down to its simplest part so that you can introduce your kids to role-playing game in a practice sort of way that is easy for them to step into, isn't overwhelming for them or for yourself, and leads them to the path where in the future that they're going to be playing role-playing games that you enjoy and ones that you discover together for years and years to come. I created Let's Go to Rumino as one of those kind of bridges, those entry points to teaching kids role-playing games. It is stripped down to those minimalist building blocks of role-playing games. You explore simple rooms with simple puzzles that have extraordinary creatures and environments and treasures and things to discover along the way. And then you move on to the next room and the next room and the next room. It's this marshmallow dungeon crawler that you can enjoy anywhere, anytime, with very little prep, with no prep at all, using the rules in here or the pick up and play rooms that have already been written inside. I hope that we have a chance to talk on this further. And if you have ideas, I hope you share them with me so that I can learn and grow in the way I'm thinking. This is my first time kind of presenting all of these different ideas outside of my book. And so they're a little rough. I can't wait to refine them, to think on them further, and be able to present these in more succinct and maybe impactful ways in the future. But I hope that if you're watching this, that some part of this was useful and that it allows you to share your love of role-playing games with your kids. So that's everything I have for this episode. I'll see you in the next room.